Hello, greetings to you. I consider this to be a privilege to be here at ICOTA 2021. Special thanks to the organizer of this particular program, and at the same time, I would like to appreciate the local organizing committee for giving me the privilege to come before you to speak on the topic Research and Reports of Research. I am Dr. Animasaun from the Department of Mathematical Sciences, Fluid Dynamics and Survey Research Group, the Federal University of Technology, Accra, Nigeria. Thank you very much. Research is not something new to many of us. We've seen it as a complementary part of our career. As an academician, it's important for each and every one of us to carry out our research. In fact, not only that we carry research, we even have people under us that are doing research in which we are to supervise. So you can see that for us to operate at that level of supervision of research, that means that we are all familiar with the concept of research. So I don't need to tell us more the definition of research, but I would like to call our attention to some key words in the definition of research. As you can see on the screen, we have research as something called systematic work. It's not as if you are just doing any work. There's a work you are doing and you are to follow a particular system, a particular approach that will lead you from what you know to what you don't know. So in that case, it is called systematic work. The intention is to actually update the body of knowledge with more facts. But the key words I'm now trying to bring to your attention is the concept of creativity. You can't do something that people are familiar with, and you have to do something very new. And at the same time, you have to follow the same procedure that is well acceptable. That is why we call it a creative and systematic work in order to update the body of knowledge with more facts. And that is one thing about research. It's very important for each and every one of us to bear it in mind that whatever we are trying to do, there must be creativity. Another important thing now is what is called a kind of activities that has to do with collection of data. Not only that we collect the data, we document it. We are talking about a documentation of critical information. The most important sensitive aspect of the information, we document it for others to see. And at the same time, we analyze and interpret the data information. But if you look at this definition, there is a key word there, and it has to do with systematic inquiry. It's like you are trying to know something and you are passionate to really see how important that thing is. So we have inquiry and enquiry. But one thing about inquiry is that it's more like a reasoning skills. So now, if you remember from my first definition, I said research is like a systematic work. We follow a particular pattern, a particular sequence of activities in order to provide answer to question. But as we are doing that, we are trying to make known certain things. We are trying to unravel certain things that are not known. So another key words I'm trying to bring to your attention here is called systematic inquiry. And that is one thing about. You'll be glad to know the third key words now. It is called careful consideration of study. It has to do with you reading over and over and over and over again. But as you are trying to do that, you are trying to be very careful to know that what you want to spend your time upon, what you want to try to do, is not something that is existing somewhere. How would it feel if you spend 2 years doing a research and at the end of the research you now notice that the same thing you've done has been published 3 years before? How will you feel about that? That is what we are talking about here, is that research, it has to do with careful consideration of study. Before you embark on it, you need to really carry out a thorough literature review to be very sure that this thing you are talking about, you want to do, is not existing anywhere. It's not something that has been published and people have already, in fact, at times, how will you feel if the research you are bringing in, someone have published it and there has been a kind of comment, a negative comment on the work 3 years ago? You now say now that is a kind of wasted effort. That is another thing now that we should notice. So based on this now, you can now see now that there are major 3 keywords in the definition of research. And the first one I said, research must be creative. It must be a systematic inquiry in such a way that as you are trying to unravel it, you follow the same system that is well known among the experts in the field. And at the same time, it must be a kind of careful consideration of study. Don't just spend your time doing something that is already known. That even people have, it's just like you are talking about a food that people have finished eating. You see that? You know, people, a kind of food that people are already familiar with the taste, with the aroma, and they already know everything about the food, and you are not bringing the food as something you spend every aspect of your resources to establish. That is why I'm trying to bring to your attention these 3 keywords. You will now see that as important as research is, another thing is, what about the reports? You know, how do we is it really important for me to make my report, to document my report? Like I've said earlier, it's very important that you should document your report. But not only that, it has to do with scientific gathering, you know, relevant to your field of expertise. The only thing that can make you to gain access to such a gathering is if you are well known in the field. Even if I thought you are not well known, you are coming up with something. People can actually trace 1 or 2 facts to you. So, and how is that possible? That is if you can report your findings. Whatever you are doing, you make it available to others. And that one will give you a kind of entrance into such a gathering. Another thing now is called to be engaged with colleagues who are experts. You know, when by the time you are through with your research, you put it in a particular order, then you have the document. Then the next thing is that you send it out to journal. You know, and the main process is for the journal to look at it if it's worthy to put on their platform, if it's worthy to present to others. So, but before they can do that, there's someone called academic editor. When the editor-in-chief look at your report and is of the opinion that the report looks somehow, but is not really sure, then it will now called associate editor. An associate editor who is an expert in that field or is well knowledgeable, and that one will now call on peer reviewers to check. So you now see that in the process now, you are now trying to be engaged with not only 1 person, 2 person, at times minimum of 4, because the minimum number of peer reviewers should be 2. So you've been engaged with the editor-in-chief, you've been engaged with the academic editor, and you've been engaged with 2 other reviewers. That makes it minimum of 4. So which means that it's very important to prepare your report to make it known to others, because it will connect you with experts in the field. And this one will not only improve the quality of your report, it will also add some values to you, because in the process you will know what it takes to be relevant in that journal. You will know what it takes to be an expert in your. By the time I'm through with my research, you know, I want others to read it. I want others to know about my findings. And that is one thing that many of us have benefited, you know, looking at us from primary school, from college. We've read many textbooks. We've studied so many materials. And all those things, they've been used to internalize us into the body of knowledge. You know, by the time you read a particular book, you get to know what the author is saying. You agree or you disagree. That one has already made you to be part of the body of knowledge. So it's a means of internalizing one another. So one thing about it is that we need to prepare our report and make it known to others in order to make others to see what we've done, so that they can read it, and who knows, it can be useful for them. They can use it to validate other points. There are many things at times that we observe in our research, and we are looking for ways to really describe it. And that is why we need to take extra length to be very conversant with journals that always publish facts in our field. Once in a while, we just read through their profile, we check through their new volume, new issues, we see the new articles that they've published. And one thing now is that by the time you get to know about all these reports, then you can cite them. You can use their point to validate your own new findings. Or perhaps there is a kind of contradiction in your report and you are looking for facts to really explain the contradiction, and that is what makes it to be important for us to carry out our research, to report our research, and to make it available to people so that they can actually read it and they can communicate with us, and at the same time they can cite the work, and at the same time they can extend the body of. By the time we are through with this, there's still one more point that I still need to emphasize on this. There's something called interested person in research. In my feed now, I know some people that they are interested. In fact, we have a WhatsApp group where we normally meet and talk. So there are some people that are interested in your results. So how will you engage with them? They are all over the world. How will you now engage with all those people to really communicate your findings with them so that they can get to know of what you are doing, so that you will not stand in isolation? How do you do it? Then that one now means that your research report should be made available, in order to convey to the interested person the whole result of your study. And that is not all. There's no research without conclusion. And your conclusion is based on the discussion of your results. Or perhaps I can say it this way, that your conclusion is based on the analysis and discussion of your results. And when you come up with this conclusion, you can't stand alone. You want others to know about your conclusion, that there's things you follow and what makes your conclusion to be valid. So you communicate with others and they see what you're talking about. That is another purpose why we need to embark to make our research reports to be interested to others. Now, the third point I'm not going to bring to your attention now is called research questions. Wow. By the time you are through with all these things we're talking about, you carry out the research, you are preparing your research report, and then how will you now help others to be connected to you? That is the most important aspect of research reports. You want others to be connected. Then how will you do it? Then I bring to you now what is called research question. It's just like a group of words that they are very clear, they are focused, they are concise, they are complex, and they are arguable. They are something we can argue about, and they are within the center of the research. So that is what we mean by research question. Those 5 aspects, those 5 attributes, they are very, very important, because when your research questions are very clear, are focused, are concise, are complex, are something we can argue about, it helps others to easily know the direction you are going. In fact, I always put it as thought leading. If I'm reading your report and I want to know the direction, how I can easily understand the point you are making, then I will go straight to the research question. But this is something that is always missing. You can go back to the literature, check many published articles, you will notice that this aspect of research question is missing. It's not there. Then the question is this: why? What is the problem? Then before I proceed, let's take a look at the research question on the screen now. How does convective acceleration and unsteady acceleration associated with the problem of leading edge accretion affect the boundary layer flow of ternary hybrid nanofluid? If you look at that research question, you will notice that it's very clear, because from there I can easily see the major keywords and the minor keywords. Because in this case, the major keywords is the dynamics of ternary hybrid nanofluid. So if that is the major, then what about the minor? The minor, they are convective acceleration. Another minor is unsteady acceleration. Another minor is leading edge accretion. So in such a case now, you cannot easily see that the research question here is concise, because I didn't use too much of it. But if this is true, then let's take a step ahead to know more about this attribute of research question. When do we say a research question is very clear? Number 1, you must be specific enough to let the audience to understand what you are talking about, in the sense that try as much as possible to involve the keywords, the major keywords and the minor keywords. By the time we can easily see these two, then we can know that, oh, this is the direction you are going. Your research question is very clear. If the audience can easily understand the purpose of the research, most times we spend a lot of time trying to get results. At times when we are carrying out the research and we have a contradicting result, we become confusing. The whole thing, it's getting, frustrated. Then the question is this: what should I do? And in that case, that is why at times we need to go on a break. By the time you are getting a result and the result you are getting, they are not really the things, they are contradicting one another. Please try to go for a break. Because if you don't go for a break like that, you begin to look for too much of words to explain your opinion. And that makes your report to be cumbersome. But I'm now trying to bring to your attention now the fact that your research question should be very clear. It should be very clear in the sense that people should read through and they can easily connect to you. They can get your explanation. And another thing I normally explain to my mentees, my followers, is that make sure that your research question, you can easily present your dependent variable and independent variables. There's no research we are doing on the surface of the earth without those two keywords. It's either we have a major keywords and minor keywords, or you have dependent variable and independent variable. So with that, make sure that you have your research questions that are very clear. Another thing is that it should be very focused. What I'm trying to say is that it can be answered thoroughly in the space the written task allows, in the sense that don't have a research question that you will not be able to provide answer to it in your analysis and discussion of the results is not good enough. Whatever the question you have at the end of the introduction section, make sure that all the answers can be found in your analysis and discussion of results. That is the most important thing, because if you look at it now, you are trying to, in fact, at times I can advise that when you are through with your analysis of results again, please go back to your research question and see if you've been able to connect, if you'll be able to provide all the answer. In fact, it's better for you to provide enough answer to your question than to have a question that you didn't answer. It's very important. So please make sure that the research question you have, you can easily provide answers to all of them, which is far more better than you should have a research question that you didn't just attempt. So that is what can make research be focused. And don't forget, most times by the time your research questions are very clear, then you just notice that it's focused. But the only thing now is that when you get your analysis and discussion of results, try as much as possible to make sure that you thoroughly provide answers to all the research questions. The next thing now is coincides. Just like I said earlier, that at times we spend 2, 3, 4 months on a particular research trying to really explain what it means, and this at times it brings to our knowledge, to our mind, so many things, and we now find it difficult to be able to use a few group of words. And that is why most times we normally lose this coincides aspect of research question. Even not only research question, the whole report. But the way forward is this: no matter what, please don't use too much of words. The best thing you can do is that I'm talking about a few group of words should be enough to give us the research question. Another important thing now is complex. Your research question should be complex, in the sense that the answer to those research questions should not be yes or no. The answer to the research question should not be 1, 5, 10. How old are you? That should not be a kind of research question we are talking about. But to be candid with you, we are talking about a logical research question. And when we say something is logical, we expect the answers to require each and every one of us to be able to synthesize and analyze the idea. Don't forget that the question you are presenting, you will need to provide answers to it in your analysis and discussion section. And consequently, such answer should require someone to break it down, in the sense that you break it down to a component and you can combine everything together to still give you back the title of the research. That is what I'm trying to say now, is that try as much as possible to make sure that the research questions, they requires each and every one of us to synthesize and analyze it. In fact, that is one thing that has been keeping the body of knowledge growing. Because by the time you break down the research question, you try to see what others are doing, you get to know more about it. That is one way to internalize each and every one of us, to be connected, to get to know about the expansion in the body of knowledge. And that is what science is all about. Even not only science, technology. Everything we are talking about, it should be complex. And at the same time, the answer to the research question should not be yes or no. 1, 5, 10, 20. No. It should be something that can take from 2 different levels. And that is the only thing that can make us to be able to analyze the idea and at the same time to synthesize it. The last point now is the fact that research questions should be something we should argue about. And that is one thing that many of us scientists don't really like, because after spending like 4 or 5 months on a particular research and you are expecting me to come and be arguing, which I don't really like. But one thing I've noticed is that it helps a lot. If you look at the presentation of Professor Sharma, you will notice that he said at the end of his research, he received 9 queries. When people contradict, when people call him a lot of things, and at the end of the day, he went back to really carry out the research, and he discovered that most of the things they're talking about, they're not realistic, they're not real. They are just like a kind of contradiction, which is not acceptable. But one thing is that by the time we are through with our research, it should be something that should lead to argument, because in the process of argument, we get to know so many things. Because there's no way no how you need to bring out so many points to defend yourself. And at the same time, you need to bring out so many points to prove that the point you are making is correct. So when you argue about it, it brings a kind of open debate. And in that case, that's when we can know the fact to accept and the fact to reject. Even that is one thing about conferences. It's advisable that you should visit conferences whereby you present your report and people bring out queries. And that is one thing that has been affecting some. You see some people, they are good in research, then just of sudden, they are not good again. What is happening? Go and find out. You notice that they've exposed themselves to some kind of criticisms and they find it difficult to bear with it. But I'm not trying to tell you now that our research question should be something that will lead to argument. And argument is something we should embrace. But the only thing is that it should be a constructive argument. There's something called blind argument. Blind argument is when you know that when you jump from a 3-story building, you'll be injured, and you are not telling someone that if you jump, you will not be injured without using parachutes. You see? So one thing we can do is that we should make our argument to be something constructive. It should be creative, and that is one thing that can help the body of knowledge, and most especially our research question as well. It should be a kind of question that will bring forth more reports. So the next thing is for us to consider some samples of our research question. So the first thing we're going to consider now is that how should social networking sites address the harm they cause? If you look at that question, it will look as if it's actually perfect. But look at it again, you will notice that the question is not clear, in the sense that the dependent variable that I've mentioned earlier is not there. The independent variable I mentioned is not also there. In fact, if you look at it, you notice that it's very difficult for us to be able to lay our hand on the major variable and minor variable in this context. Now, let's take a look at another version of the research question. What action should social networking sites like MySpace and Facebook take to protect users' personal information and privacy? Now, if you look at this case now, you notice that this questioner is able to emphasize on the networking sites with reference to MySpace and Facebook. And not only that, again, it also brings to our attention the harm. What is the harm? That is the protection to users' personal information and privacy. So what I'm not trying to say now is that if we are to come up with a research question, we should make sure that such a research question is indeed clear. And how can we make it to be clear? We only need to specify the major and the minor in the question. In fact, if you look at it now, it's harm that was mentioned in the first, in the unclear statement, is now clarified in second one. And at the same time, the users is also what specified. And with that, we can say that there will not be anything like ambiguity. And in fact, it will leave room for you can get the accurate interpretation. Another example we're going to consider now is the case of unfocused. I want to show you a research question that is not focused. Let's see on the screen. So, what is the effect on the environment from global warming? You know, if you look at this question, it's even hard to read, because what is the effect? Effect of what? On what? You see that? Effect of what on what? And that is when we can easily come up with the dependent and independent, major and minor, because you cannot say that what is the effect of something on something, but here it says what is the effect on the environmental from, even looking at the preposition from global warming. You notice that the question is not focused, and in fact is not clear. So what do we need to do now is that we revise it. Look at it, the revision now. What is the most significant effect of glacier melting on the lives of penguins in Antarctica? So you now see now that this question is very clear. Why? Because we know the dependent variable and independent variable. In this case, the dependent variable is the lives of penguins in Antarctica, while the independent variable is glaciers melting. Or perhaps I can say that the major variable here is that the lives of penguin in Antarctica, while the minor is what? Glaciers melting. Okay, now let's take a look at research question sample 3 now. In this is the evidence of our publication, and the title of that research is called Ternary Hybrid Nanofluids, but with an emphasis to the significance of suction, dual stretching on three-dimensional flow of water conveying nanoparticle with various shapes and density. So if you look at the research question, you notice that it contains everything that we expect a research article should present to us. But the question now is this: what about the research question? How can we break it down to research question? Now look at it again. Now look at the screen. Now you will see there are 4 research questions associated to this title. So which means that and if you look at each of them, you notice that each of them is actually trying to point our direction to what we are going to see in the analysis and discussion of results. If you look at the first question now, the first question is saying that, is there any methodology that is suitable to investigate the dynamics of water conveying nanoparticles with smaller density of different shape within the band layer? And don't forget that from the title we've talked about various shapes and various densities. So you now notice that research question is to focus on that aspect of the title. Don't forget that the title should be comprehensive enough in such a way that we can break it down to components of objectives. Now let's take a look at the second research question now. The second research question says that, how does suction affect? Look at the title. You notice that in the title we are saying that we are going to focus on the significance of suction and dual stretching. And you can now see from the second research question now is that the local skin friction, heat transfer, and the dynamics of water-based ternary hybrid nanofluid. We want to check how it affects the skin friction. So, which is a component, which is just like an objective under in the title. So, based on this, you can see clearly now that it's very possible for us to break down our title to meaningful research questions, and we should put the research question at the bottom of our introduction. I think that is still the best. In fact, some people, whenever I'm reviewing, I normally recommend to them that they can come up with a new subsection where they should present the research question. And don't forget, by the time you have the research question, your analysis of results, your discussion of results should focus on how you are going to provide answers to all these research questions, and your conclusion should be based strictly on the research question. So on this note, I would like to appreciate the organizer for this privilege to share with you certain things that you know about research and reports of research. And at the same time, I would like to say thank you very much for listening, for watching this video. Thank you very much.